Have you ever been gifted a vintage fabric and didn't know what to do with it? Let me help you with that. Hi, it's Fran Morgan with Fabric Cafe, and I'm your fabric matchmaker. We get lots of entries here on Matchmaker that are fabrics that were gifted, and many of these gifted fabrics are vintage, which can be just a little bit challenging. Well, today I am going to go over some tips on using these vintage fabrics. Also, stay tuned to the end because I'm going to go over how you can send in a swatch and participate in Matchmaker. So let's start out with our first participant and look at the fabric that she sent in because it's really amazing. It's awesome. All right, so Martina here sent in this great vintage fabric, and it's very interesting. It kind of has a 60s flavor, a 1960s flavor to me. It's got these beautiful turquoises, golds in the vases, as well as some of the browns. And look at this, isn't this cool? It's like horizontal blinds, and here you see your vase on the backside. It's very, very interesting fabric. So let's see what Martina has to say about this. Martina writes, "This fabric was bought by my mother over 30 years ago. At the time, she collected miniature vases, and the colors in the house were turquoise, brown, pale orange, and a little green. I am stumped. Martina, we have got some really great fabrics to coordinate with it and a great quilt pattern, so let's check that out." So Martina, I have chosen the Roman holiday pattern to put your fabric in, and there's a couple of reasons why. First, your fabric is a larger print, so I needed the nice size block that Roman holiday has to really show off that print so that you can see what's going on in it. The second reason is because it is a directional fabric. And on this particular block here, we can cut these independently so we can make sure that your fabric is upright on all of the blocks, which is really important. The next reason is because it has a really great graphic detail here that gives it a lot of interest and a lot of movement and kind of mimics a little bit that style of your fabric as well. So let's put it on the table and talk about the coordinating fabrics that we've chosen for you. Now, Martina, we have placed your fabric in the #1 position, which goes where this large block is here, where this black is. Now, this is really great quilt pattern for your type of fabric. So as I mentioned at the quilt, your fabric is a larger print and it's a directional print, and all of these are cut independently. So you can put this in that. So it works really well, so you're not having to worry about flipping your fabric upside down or anything like that. Now, something else which is really great about Roman holiday, if you were gifted, let's say you were gifted kind of a bag of fabric that's vintage or anything really, and you get it out and you're looking at it and you don't have full yards. Well, Roman holiday would be a great pattern to put different fabrics in all of these blocks because they're cut independently and because you can use a directional fabric. So no matter what you get in your scrap bag or whatever you find in your stash, this will work beautifully. So fantastic pattern for that. Now the #2 that we have chosen is, it's kind of a light turquoise. It's kind of a warm turquoise, which I thought worked really well because your vases really need to be the highlight of the show on your fabric. So this is going to be our background. That's everywhere you see the white here. So it's just got a little bit of a retro print that I think mimics your style of your fabric really well. I really liked it. Now the #3 fabric that we've chosen is this great fun brown, and this brown is like a darker brown with a lighter brown, kind of a pin dot that's a little random, and it picks up all the different shades of brown in your fabric. That is going to go everywhere the red is, which I really like because the turquoise and the brown and the creams in your fabric, these are so great together, and it really does showcase that time period, which I think is really important. We want to enhance your vintage fabric. We don't want to draw the attention away from it. We want to show how gorgeous it is, and I think it's going to be great in Roman holiday. As you can see, your large print fabric being directional works really well in these squares, and those angles of the other alternate blocks really mimic and pick up the style, as well as that #2 and 3 fabric works so well together. Martina, thank you so much for participating. We are going to be sending you the book Quick as a Wink, which the Roman holiday pattern is included in this book, as well as 1 yard of the fabric number 2 and number 3. All right, now let's check out this other fabric because it's really great. All right, so I have picked a different kind of vintage styled fabric to go in Roman holiday. Now, I have to say, I try really hard to find something very similar, but sometimes these vintage fabrics are very unique and very special, like Martina's was. So I kind of picked something that had the same kind of era feel, like the same vintage era. And these starburst, these Sputnik things that are so popular and so much fun. And it has the similar colors as Martina's. And she did mention that her mother's house growing up had the oranges and the browns and the turquoise, so I thought it kind of fit. So this is a fun fabric. It's gonna go everywhere the black is here. And then we've picked up our same soft turquoise as our number 2, which goes everywhere the white is. And then our brown, which is so much fun with this, to go everywhere the red is. Now, this turned out really fun too. It has a little bit different look than Martina's, but it has that same style, that same vintage era that Martina's fabric had. And I think it's just fun. I just love these Sputnik kind of things. I even have a few of these lights in my house. I think they're just so much fun. And you can see that that focused fabric just gives a fun burst on those blocks, gives you lots of movement, and the background is the perfect complement. So I think it's just really great. This kit is called Vintage Collection. The number is 8023362. The pattern is Roman Holiday from the book Quick as a Wink. Now that pattern is only available in the book Quick as a Wink, so we are suggesting an alternate pattern that would come free with your kit, and that is bold blocks. But of course, you can choose whichever one you want. So vintage fabric is fabric that was produced more than 30 years ago. Now we are showing you possibly some vintage, as you've seen already with Martina's, or vintage styled, which means it's more of a reproduction. It's a flavor from over 30 years ago. So a lot of these fabrics that were sent in do look like that they're actually vintage. They definitely have that look and that feel. So this whole thing is about that style, that look, that fun flavor that is from days gone by in the past. So let's jump into our next participant and look at this fun fabric that Debbie has sent in. Now Debbie has sent in, okay, Debbie, whenever I got your fabric, I chuckled just a little bit because it just makes me happy. It's one of those fabrics that's so unique and so interesting, and I had to just sit here and look at it for a little while. So you sent in this fabric with these lamps on it, and these lamps are made with all different kinds of greens and yellows and black. And in the background, we have this little starburst. This is so cute. I just love it. It is so much fun. So let's see what Debbie has to say about this fabric. So Debbie writes, when I first started quilting 10 years ago, I didn't have any fabric. So a friend would look for fabric for me in thrift stores. She gave me this fabric. I didn't like it at first, but then its sense of whimsy appealed to me, and I noticed all of the various patterns in the lampshades. Suddenly, it's more attractive to me. It looks like a vintage fabric to me, so I thought maybe a pattern to emphasize that aspect would be good. But I have no idea what fabric to put with it. That's why I need your help. Thanks, Debbie. Well, Debbie, I think we have some fun things for you and lots of good ideas on how to use your vintage fabric. So let's jump in and look at that first quilt. So we are going to use the So Quick pattern with your lampshade fabric, Debbie, and I think it's perfect. So we have a nice big block here, which I think is really important on Matchmaker, that we really see the fabric that you've sent in. So we're going to put all of your lamps in this nice block. And then we have just a nice 4-patch here. And to me, the style of your fabric kind of lends itself to a 4-patch, or kind of that square patchworky look from that era. So I think this is going to work really well. We've got some great companion fabrics for you. So let's put this on the table and check those out. We're going to start with your fabric because your fabric is darling. All of these fun lamps, all these little patchwork lamps, which is kind of interesting, with all these fun different textures and patterns on those lamps are great. That is going to go everywhere the big block is with this daisy. And what that's going to do is it's really going to be the star of the show on the quilt, which is what we want because your fabric is very special. We do not want to draw attention away from it. So in this position, you're going to really see it. All right, now what I tried to do whenever I matched the two companion fabrics was I tried to find something that looked similar to the little prints in your lamps, because I thought it was so cute. I wanted it to just look like an extension of the lamps, which I thought were so great. So I've put the number 2 fabric with this kind of a nice soft yellow with the little flowers on it that kind of is reminiscent of yours. Of course, it's not an exact, flower match, but I think it works really well. And that is gonna go in your 4 patch here as well as a little bit on the border. Now, the number 2 fabric here is a directional fabric, but it is gonna work in this as long as it's kind of like a stripe. You see how this stripe works here? This is gonna work the same way perfectly, but it's gonna go everywhere you see the yellow here. Now, our number 3 fabric matches our number 2 really well, but it also looks great with the focus, which is your lamps. Now, this is kind of a retro dot that has that feeling of retro, and I think it also picks up some of the textures in your lamp fabric, which I really like. It's a green with a little black and then a little line dot. It's very cool. This fabric is going to go everywhere the black is. So that kind of accents your fabric, those same flavors of fabric, but it's not too overpowering so that we can really focus on the lamps. You can see how darling that turned out. You can see that 4 patch works really well with the lamps, and your lamps are the showcase so that you really, really see them. So I think it just worked so, so well. Debbie, love your fabric. I would love to see it all made up. Send that photo to matchmaker@fabriccafe.com because I would love to see how it works. Okay, for participating today, I am going to send you the book Quilt Favorites, which has the So Quick pattern in it, as well as 1 yard of our number 2 yellow fabric and our number 3 green fabric. Okay, I'm pulling a fast one on you. We are switching up our patterns here for everyone else for the look-alike kit for Debbie. This pattern is Rickrack. Now, this is a great pattern, and it also has the feeling that is influenced by the era of Debbie's fabric. So we have this great kind of a line here that's created from the block, and this is a great pattern for smaller prints. So remember those 2 smaller prints that were with Debbie's fabric? We're going to play off of that. We're going to put it in Rickrack. This is the perfect one to do so. So let's get it on the table and talk about the fabric. Now what we've done is I've changed the position of our yellow. I have made this yellow our focus fabric, and it's going to work really well in this Rickrack pattern. Now remember I mentioned that this is a great pattern for smaller prints. On the vintage prints, most of the time they tend to be a little bit smaller, florals, textures, graphics, and things like that. And this pattern is perfect for that. So that's why we have put these fabrics in this pattern. So we have our yellow here. The yellow is going to go everywhere you see this darker blue here. And it's really great. It's going to fit well. You're going to see an image in a minute so that you know what I mean. Okay, now our number 2 fabric now is this great white with this little X. Now the reason why I chose this one is because I'm going to pull Debbie's fabric back over here. You see how she has this little starburst in the background of her fabric? I wanted to mimic that feel, so I wanted to find something similar that would give us the same flavor as Debbie's fabric and make it a lot of fun. So this is a white with just that little X on there that kind of has that kind of 50s feel that Debbie's fabric have that works really well. That is going to go everywhere you see this lighter blue here, which is also on the border and in all of our blocks. And I think it really is a great texture to include with this. Then our number 3 is the same green, which I love this green. The black dot with the little line dot works really well, coordinates very well with our yellow. And of course, the black picks up the black in our number 2. That is going to go everywhere the purple is. And I'm going to tell you, all of these interesting textures work perfectly in this. All of them are kind of on the small side, but really quick, let's look at this. We have a small texture here. We have a medium texture here. We have a larger texture here. That's what's going to keep our interest and lots of contrast. So it's going to work beautifully. And you can see it has that great vintage feel. I mean, my goodness, this looks so perfect in this. The colors are beautiful together. Really love it. I can see this in so many uses in the home. It's just darling. We want to talk about patterns that can use smaller prints because the vintage prints do tend to be smaller. So I have a couple of other images for you that I put it in some other patterns. The first one is hopscotch. I love hopscotch for smaller prints. There's a lot of interest going on in hopscotch. So it's going to work really well. And of course we talked about the scale of the fabrics and how they're just slightly different. And that gives you that great combination and the contrast. So it works really well. All right, I got one more too, and that is 9 patch. I think the design of this pattern in and of itself is perfect for this era of fabric. So it goes really well together. Once again, our scale is perfect. Smaller blocks, works so super well, and I think it's darling. So if you choose to purchase this kit, which I hope you do because it's really cute, you can choose any of these patterns to put with your kit, which is perfect. So let's get the kit information on this kit. It is called Whimsy-Daisical, and the number is 8023361. And we have put it in the Rickrack pattern, which is in the Quick as a Wink book, and it's only in the Quick as a Wink book. So we are suggesting an alternate pattern of hopscotch. So our next vintage style fabric was sent in by Lupe. And this is darling. We have a nice yellow in the background with a little coral flower, a little gray and a little green in there. Very, very sweet, and definitely that vintage style. So let's see what Lupe has to say about this. She writes, I got this fabric from my good friend who at one time wanted to start quilting, but just didn't get around to it. So I would like to surprise her with a quilt for her 7-year-old daughter, Lupe. Well, let's see what we can get for you, Lupe. I think we've got something fantastic. So Lupe, we have decided to put your fabric into the quilt Memories, which I think is the perfect style for your fabric. So we have a fun block here that's put together. This is going to be perfect for the smaller print like your fabric is, and your fabric is not directional, so this works really well. And it kind of has this basket weave feel, or like I thought whenever I designed it, it was almost like one of those bulletin boards with the ribbons that you tuck in your memories. So this in and of itself is a great quilt because it's called Memories and it will reflect that vintage feel. So your fabric, like I said, is the smaller print with that vintage style, and we are going to put it in the focus position, which is where this blue is. And it's going to work really well because it's not a directional fabric, and this block is turned, so that's very important to keep in mind. Now I've put it with 2 vintage style fabrics, a pin dot, which this pin dot for our number 2 is going to pick up all the corals in your flower, which I think is perfect. And this is going to go everywhere you see the white floral here on this quilt. And then I've put this little starburst with it, which is really perfect. That is going to be your ribbon in the quilt, everywhere you see the green here. Once again, it is not directional, so it's going to go in there, it's going to turn really well, and it's going to look fantastic. So another great quilt pattern for smaller prints with that vintage flavor that we're looking for. I think it turned out wonderful, and I just love the red and the yellow, or it's kind of a corally red with the yellow and white. It just is so darling. I think it turned out so, so well, and definitely has that vintage flair. And I'm sure your friend's daughter is going to love it. For participating today, Lupe, which I really appreciate, I'll be sending you a copy of the 1-block 3-yard quilt book, which is what book this pattern is, the Memories is in, as well as 1 yard of our number 2 fabric and our number 3 fabric. So thank you so much. Would love to see a photo. Be sure to send that in if you get it completed. Matchmaker@fabriccafe.com. So let's take a look at the companion kit for this. I think it is amazing how close I was able to get to Lupe's fabric. So I was able to find this nice soft yellow, very much like hers, with a coral flower with another little blue flower, and it is just so, so sweet. Now this is our focus. Not a big print, but definitely bigger of the 3. It will go where the blue is. And then of course our pin dot with the coral dot is going to pick up our coral color in our flowers here. That will go in the background. And then our great corally red on our ribbons for our number 3 fabric. It's going to be just amazing. Let's look at that image, and you're probably going to do a double take because it looks so much like Lupe's quilt. It's almost, you have to look twice. I think it is absolutely darling. I love the vintage feel that the pattern helps to accentuate with the fabric, and this is going to just go together so quick, and it's just going to be darling. This is called a Flower Surprise. The number is 8023360. It is our Memories pattern from the 1 Block 3 Yard Quilts. Now that pattern is only available in the 1 Block book, so we are suggesting the pattern spools. So I want to thank all 3 participants today for sending in amazing vintage style fabrics. Just love them. Now if you have a stash of fabric with some vintage style or any other style that you're a little challenged matching, we have another video that you might want to check out with some additional great tips. Now, if you would like to submit to Matchmaker, which I would love to see your fabric swatch, be sure to visit fabriccafe.com, go to the free goodies tab, and there you will find our submission form for the Matchmaker. I do prefer a 12-inch swatch if at all possible, and we will do what we can to get it matched up, choose a pattern, and get it on air. Thank you so much. It's Fran Morgan, your fabric matchmaker.